Good morning, everyone. Fred DeFalco here, and I could not wait for this interview. I had one of our members in the 920 Society said, "You've got to meet Jared and see what he's doing." Right away, I always look at people's LinkedIn and the videos I saw in there. Right away, I want you to look at his name. I want you to track him down, stalk him on social media. And I said, "Who in the world is this young man?" And what he was talking about on LinkedIn. So, Jared, I'm so excited to have you here this morning. I couldn't wait for this. This is all about the work you're doing in Israel and doing it through social entrepreneurship.
Yeah. Well, first thing, I love what you're doing. I love what you stand for. It's an honor to be part of your community. And I'm eager to share. What we're talking about is time sensitive. I would even venture to say it's mission critical. And my hope and desire is that inspires everyone in this community to somehow get involved or to just model what we're doing in your own way and go after something big, bold, and audacious. I know this is a community of change makers, and I stand for that. There's too many people that talk change, and very few people make change happen. And the only way you can make change happen is you stop talking and you start executing. So ask me anything. Let's dig in and let's create some value for this wonderful community that you built.
You got it, man. And folks, buckle your seatbelt because the work that they're doing is truly social entrepreneurship. um, in action. So Jared, you know, I watched the UN speech here with Netanyahu, and he held these two charts up, the curse and the blessing. And I thought this was pretty interesting. Now, in the 920 Society and then the sister community, 920 Miracles, I have people from all walks. Matter of fact, 920 Miracles, a pragmatic spiritual success. I say no matter where you are, whether you're agnostic, atheist, religious, non-religious, doesn't matter because it's all about all 10 of the major sacred writings and what can we learn from all of them. So I do have some people that, maybe from Palestine. So this has nothing to do with politics, folks. This has nothing to do with theology or beliefs or anything else. This has to do with practical what all those manuscripts together write. And when you look at this morning's post, the same message of love comes out of all those manuscripts, comes out of all those scriptures, come out of all those writings. So Jared, during this talk here, he was talking about what they want to build here, the blessing, that pipeline, and what you're doing is right a part of that. So you want to start talking about what it is that you're doing in a very pragmatic way.
Yeah. And the way I'll speak into it is I'm going to share a little bit of my background first, because I think it's important for anyone that's doing anything meaningful to start to connect the dots that every life event that has transpired for you has prepared you for what you're about to step into. So what we're doing in Israel right now, and I said it's time sensitive, it's mission critical, is something that I've been working on for almost 15 years. It just wasn't specific to Israel. But like I said, every life event prepares us for that moment where we really can make a significant impact. So my background is I'm what you call a non-tech tech founder. So what that means is there is not an engineering bone in my body. I know how to write marketing copy and I know how to sell. And over the past decade plus, my team and I have built a portfolio of B2B and B2C SaaS companies. SaaS is software as a service. I have this very firm belief that the only way to reduce or maybe even eliminate risk in an early stage software company is to take full operational responsibility. So in each of our portfolio companies, we become the engineering team, we become the marketing team, and we become the back office team as well. So we're not just writing a check and praying. Not that there's anything wrong with that. That's just not what we do. Instead, we really get into the weeds and we build businesses. On October 7th, a war began in Israel. And I'm sure that you're aware of this, as this is not a political conversation. This is a conversation around potential. This is a conversation around innovation. This is a conversation around impact. And as a Jewish man raising a Jewish family, I felt overwhelmingly responsible to do something. But I wasn't sure what that something was. And like I mentioned to you, Fred, prior to this interview, I'm not a passive supporter to anything. So I was trying to figure out, like, where can I situate myself to make the most significant impact, to create the most change. And I feel like it found me about 3.5 months ago from the time of this interview, when I learned that there's thousands of early stage software companies in Israel right now that are in a distressed state. I'm going to say a very distressed state for all the wrong reasons. Founders and founding teams have been pulled into combat, which means their business, and what I would even call their dream, and you get that as an entrepreneur, it's your dream, it's your child. They've put it on ice. These are the kind of companies that in the past two, maybe 2.5 years, they went out and did their first round of financing, usually from their friends and family and or Israeli angel investors. They steward the money well. They build a really good product. The revenue is minimal only because the company itself is young, but in its current situation and the current climate that this business exists within, it has absolutely no chance of making it. These are very small teams, usually anywhere from 3 to 5 people on a team, a third of which are in combat as we speak, a third of which have a family member that's in combat. And the final third is just distracted by combat. So you can't deploy capital into a business like this. It's just unfortunately too distracted and just too dispersed. In addition to that, the revenue just isn't significant enough yet to withstand a war that who knows when this is going to end. So unfortunately, these companies are just going to disintegrate like this. Over the past few months, I've had the honor to speak with well over a dozen of these startups. And on each call, Fred, I always ask two specific questions. So the first is, how many other companies do you think are in the same situation that you're in right now in Israel? Software only, because that's our focus. And what they've shared with me is mind-blowing. They believe that there's close to 5,000 companies that are in this distressed state. It's such a material number, and in so many ways, that represents the future of the tech ecosystem in Israel. And you may or may not know this, but Tel Aviv is the second largest tech ecosystem behind Silicon Valley. So that represents the economy of Israel right there. The second question I asked them is, knowing what you now know about me and our team, and most importantly, what we've done and what we do, what can we do to bless you? You're out there protecting the homeland. We are completely committed to your dream. And each of these entrepreneurs and startup teams have said the exact same thing. Take over the company and launch it in the US. That was our plan and goal. You're just going to do it 5 or 6 years before we thought we could. Issue some non-voting equity to my family as an insurance policy while I'm at war. Keep the doors open for me to come back and join forces again, either as a founder or as an active team member. And if I do, and if I can, I would like to earn more equity as a result, which we would love. This talent is very strong, and pay some cash on closing, and then have a bonus structure in place to create additional liquidity as economic milestones are met. Remember,
Yeah.
I said before that every one of our life events leads us to that moment when there's a calling that transpires, and we could choose to answer the calling or ignore it. So for me and for our team, we answer the calling, and we've gone all in on solving this very critical mission.
Now,
We launched a portfolio called Create Israel. Our holding company is called Create Holdings. Now, the way that Create Israel is structured is very important. It's also a holding company. It's an LLC. Inside of the LLC is a series of US-based C Corps. Each US-based C Corp is what we use to acquire the assets of the distressed
Jared,
Israeli entity. Fred, please.
yeah, the only reason because I don't want to lose my social entrepreneurs that have a little business and that's all they care about, and they think that we're talking about these big companies and these big Wall Street equity firms. We're talking about ma and pa. We're talking about entrepreneurs, family entrepreneurship, correct? In Israel.
Yeah, I mean
Yeah,
these are companies that they raised a couple $100,000 maybe from their friends and family at most, maybe $1 million. They put it to good use. They built a great product that
right.
solves some problem in the world. These are all software solutions. They launched that product. Maybe at their peak, they got to 10, 15, maybe $20,000 a month. But then
Yes.
October 7th happens. And
Right.
what happens, and this is in any business, but specifically in software, is that all business development efforts stopped for these
Right.
businesses because now their focus was on defending their homeland. It was no longer on their dream. So when you stop business development, there's this thing called natural attrition that happens in any business, from a chiropractic office to a dental practice to a software company, which means people just cancel. Their credit cards
Yes.
might decline. They get busy. They don't have a use for the service anymore. So when there's no business development efforts and there's natural attrition, what happens to your revenue is it starts moving in the wrong direction quickly. So these businesses now are doing a few $100s a month to maybe a couple of $1,000 a month, but
Families,
it's
these
not a,
families. Yeah, these
it's yeah,
families.
this
Yeah.
is their livelihood, like for
This
their
is
family.
why, yeah, folks, this is why, because when Jared first started talking at the beginning, I went, I'm not going to be getting into investment. But I mean, when I oh wait a minute, hold a second, let me rethink this for a moment. You're talking about mothers, fathers that hawked everything to go on, not hawked everything necessarily to go in business, but we know, I mean, hope most of the audience in the 920 Society are entrepreneurs. So the work that you're doing is talking about saving individuals and families, and it's just incredible because when you hear foundations and all these other things, a lot of times people think software development, they think these big huge families. I want to make sure I want to get that point in there. So go ahead.
Yeah, and I'll speak into how we're structuring it, and then I'm going to speak into why this is so critical, and not just in the war in Israel, but in general. Whenever there's a war, there's this same sequence of events. But just to go back to the structuring, and this is not to overwhelm, I just want to have everybody understand the level of thought and intention that we have put into this to ensure that it works. Because that's the key, is for it to sound good but not work doesn't actually induce any change. So we put a lot of effort into structuring this in the most advantageous way for everyone, from the soldiers to the solutions to our team. Because if it's not a win, 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 it's a lose, 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 because you can't win unless everybody is winning. So we've set up Create Israel. It's an LLC. Inside of the LLC is a series of C Corps. Each C Corp is what we use to acquire just the assets of the distressed Israeli company. That's an important distinction. So the assets are source code, users, revenue, and brand. We move it into the US-based C Corp. Now it's safe. Our team then steps in like we always have, and we take operational responsibility, engineering, marketing, and back office. We're issuing equity from the C Corp in the US back to the Israeli entity. That's why we're keeping the Israeli entity intact. Now, this equity is considered passive equity, so there's no responsibility attached to it. This is us acknowledging the work that has been done up to that point. It's also called what we say non-dilutive equity as well. So non-dilutive equity means that there's no dilution for a period of time. Now, if anyone on that team is able to stay involved or comes back in the future, both scenarios we want, there'll be more equity that is issued as a result of the responsibility they've taken on. And we also pay them cash on closing to support them and their families. And then there's a bonus structure as well to create additional liquidity as economic milestones are met. So that's the business that we're in. There was no unknowns for that business because we've been doing this for many years. It just wasn't specific to Israel. Now, our one unknown, which I'll speak to in a bit, was how do we finance this efficiently? And that was an unknown that we've been able to solve over the past 2 months. And now we're off to the races. But why does what we're doing matter? Because this is a really important thing for this beautiful society to realize, is that in every war, this is not just the war that's happening in Israel, but in every war over history, there is the same sequence of events that transpires. The war begins and the government steps in with support. What does support look like? It looks like boots, socks, and water for soldiers. Obviously, it's more than that, but it's all about defense, the defending the homeland. The next step is the patriotic people in that country either choose to drop everything or they're forced to drop everything. And the next step is for outside of the country say, we're here to support. And they do usually more of what the government does and maybe a little bit outside of what the government does as well. But what gets neglected in every war, not just the current war in Israel, every war is the economy. And the economy is then set back usually 4 or 5 times to the degree of the war itself. So if the war is 2 years, the economic setback is 8 to 10 years, or maybe even more in some ways. And the reason that's so critical is because when an economy declines, there's increased rates of mental health challenges, crime, addiction. It's really severe. So what I've been preaching from the mountaintops is if we were to reallocate 2% of the defense budget to offense, I don't mean offense as in war, I mean offense as the economy, we have the ability to preserve the economy so that whenever this war ends, hopefully it's today it ends. It's not going to, but let's hope that it would. Let's pray on that because there's a lot of casualties that are happening, innocent people that are being killed in the process of this war. If the war ended today, there's still going to be an economic setback, but it's not going to end today. So we need to get into a position of offense with regards to innovation and preserving these businesses that would have been viable if October 7th never happened. So I'll speak into how we're financing this because it's a very creative way to finance it that is infinitely scalable. Before I go there, though, Fred, is there anything else you want me to touch on with regards to the business size, the impact, etc.
No, no, I think, and you can see I stole your when you
Yeah, I
after
love
our
it.
meeting, yeah, because I wanted to make sure we hit all these points because the only thing I want to put out there, look, folks, for those of you who've been involved, you know what I've been doing the last few years, giving to the community and building that. So this is not this is not for just wealthy people to invest in. I mean, I signed up and I can only do $50 a month, but pardon me, that $50 a month times 5,000 adds up. And that's what we got to
Yeah.
remember. Some
But
of you
you're
are
bringing up the most important point of this,
right,
okay? Like, and I want to hit
right.
on this because when you think about a distressed region with distressed companies, there's one thing you don't have in your favor, and that one thing is one word, and it's called time. There's just no time. Like, you have to be able to execute really quickly. So when I was thinking about how do I finance this, I took out a clean sheet of paper. That's how I always do everything. And I wrote down, okay, self-finance. So I could self-finance to whatever degree I can. And I don't know if I have the resources to save an entire country's economy, but I was at it. Whatever it was going to take, I was willing to do. That was an option. The next option was to go out and raise equity from ultra high net worth and family offices. And for me, the tone was off of that because what I didn't want to talk about was IRR, return on investment, or cash flow, when we're really focusing on preserving a soldier's dream who's now in combat. Their wife is at home with six children, and the kids don't know if they're going to see daddy ever again. I just didn't want to have that conversation. Like, it just felt off-putting to me. But when you raise equity, that's the conversation. Like, there's no other conversation but that. No one's wrong when they ask those questions. Those are normal equity questions. So I went on this mission to see if there was some alternative way to do what we were going to do no matter what. And I'm going to call infinite scale. And in the process, I was introduced to an organization called LOHAS, LOHAS. And what LOHAS does very selectively and with an extraordinary level of diligence and discipline is they partner with high impact for-profit businesses and they help you launch a public charity, a 501(c)(3). We got approved about 2 months ago, and that approval has revolutionized this entire initiative. We launched a foundation called the Innovation Bridge Foundation. The mission of the charity is to bridge the innovation gap in distressed countries. Right now, our only focus is on Israel. I'm sure in the future, we'll support other distressed regions as well, and then also in underprivileged and underrepresented communities. What we're now able to do, and this speaks into what you were just talking about with the $50 commitment every month, is we're now able to take charitable contributions from high net worth corporations and just beautiful mission driven humans that care about what we're doing. And when they make their contribution, like any 501(c)(3), they get a tax deduction as a result. But the way we've set this up is called sustainable philanthropy. The charity has an administrator that's not me. So that's an important distinction. The administrator has a ton of responsibility, but the most important responsibility is they say yes or no to the allocation of money. So we have separation of church and state. We got Create Israel, our for-profit portfolio, approved by the administrator. So let's pretend this month, October of 2024, we decide to allocate $15 million from the Innovation Bridge Foundation, the 501(c)(3), the public charity, to Create Israel in exchange for 10% equity in Create Israel, which means that our charity is now on the cap table of the for-profit portfolio. Let's pretend Create Israel uses that $15 million and initially goes out, identifies 12 companies that are in distress in Israel, and we acquire the assets of those companies. We put each of the assets in a US-based C Corp, and we focus on commercialization, which means we're going to focus on making money with these businesses. And let's pretend that one of those companies scales really quickly, and we decide to sell it just to create liquidity, and we sell it for $250 million. And we distribute all of the money pro rata, which means equally. Well, in that one liquidity event, the charity, because of its equity position, just got $25 million, which means the charity can fully self-sustain independent of donors. And there's almost no charity that can self-sustain independent of donors. So the past 2 months have been maybe the most invigorating and positively challenging of my 20 years as an entrepreneur because I just went deep into this. I'm not a nonprofit person. I'm very philanthropic, but I myself have never had a nonprofit. So all that I did was everything, which is my strategy as an entrepreneur. I'm like, whatever sticks, I'm going to stick with. So I got really deep into the world of family office and high net worth. And I started talking with these families that prioritize impact over anything else. And their mind was literally blown with what we're doing
Yeah.
for a few reasons. One of those reasons is the impact that we're having in the current climate of Israel. That was very meaningful, both Jewish and non-Jewish families. The other thing that was very interesting for them, and I'm just sharing this with you because this is a good, interesting point of distinction, is the creativity of how we've structured this.
Yeah. So,
Families are able to now allocate money from their family foundation or what's called their donor advised fund. These are charitable vehicles that they have set up into the Innovation Bridge Foundation. And if they want to, they have the option to participate in what's called pro rata distributions that flow through the charity back into their foundation or into their donor advised fund through a recoverable grant. What does that mean? That means let's just pretend a family gave $1 million just for easy math. And remember, we're using philanthropic dollars and deploying it into high impact for profit businesses. Let's pretend that we turn that $1 million into $5 million just for easy math. Well, that family has the option to recover $5 million back into their donor advised fund or into their family foundation. And there's two benefits to this. One is they have more money to give because we were able to multiply their ability to give.
right.
The second benefit to that family is they get a deduction off of the delta between the five and the ones. They have $4 million that they can deduct off their earned income for the year. So I'm just sharing this because this is what's making these higher net worth families exciting. In addition to that, what I've learned is there's 250 billion with a B dollars in donor advised funds in the US alone. And 80% of that money has not been deployed. So it's just sitting in Schwab and Fidelity like accounts, not doing what it's meant to do, because what it's meant to do is go into missions that are going to
Circulate.
change the world. And,
Yeah.
and it's just sitting there. So we're talking with many of these administrators. We also just recently, I started getting invited to speak over the past month at different synagogues, at churches. And we're also doing something that I'm loving called private parlor meetings. We didn't make up this strategy. This has existed for hundreds of years. But what a private parlor meeting is usually inviting people like me into your living room. You invite 10 or 15 very intentional people. It's not a sales pitch. We're literally sitting on the couch in the living room, having a conversation around something, and then sharing the solution. In our scenario, talking about the Israeli economy and what we're doing to preserve it, and then inviting people, if they want to
Incredible.
participate by giving a gift. So if everything goes right this year, Fred, and that means that everyone that says they're going to donate donates, and everyone that says they're going to promote this promotes this, we could end up with close to 10,000 donors this year. A percentage of those will be high net worth, and everybody else is going to be just mission driven human beings that just really care about what we're doing in the world and they want to support it. So, what we've been working on is what we call our donor network. It's a private membership environment specifically for our donors. We're going to launch this soon. We already have tons of donors. We'll just move them into it once it's live. But what's going to happen inside this environment is really interesting. Every donor gets a login and password so they can get on the inside. And once they're on the inside, what they're going to be greeted with is called the Impact Dashboard. This is where they get a chance to see everything that we're doing.
Wow.
The
I'm looking for that.
companies, the stories, what did we learn? What's working? What's not working? We're going to have advisory opportunities that are available to our donors. Some of them are paid for, some of them are for equity. But in addition to that, for any donor that's also an accredited investor, there's a private section in the donor network where we will list companies that we've already acquired with philanthropic dollars. We've stabilized them, and now they're raising equity to scale faster. And we're giving our donors first and only right to make direct equity investments into these off-market opportunities with preferential terms, because we're kind of like keeping it in the family because it's our big donor network. So everyone that wants to get involved, they come in through charity. There's no other way to do it. They either make a donation through their cash, through their donor advised fund, or through their family foundation. And they could do that just initially in one shot. They could do it monthly, like you said, what you're doing, whatever works for you, you're able to do. And then once you're on the inside, you're on the inside, which means you're
Right.
in the donor network, you're seeing all the impact. There's various ways to get involved. And if you want upside, you will have the option to make equity investments into any of the businesses that you believe in. So I would be doing all of this no matter what. This was a calling. Like no matter what, we'd be doing this. The fact that we've been able to set up such a strong economic vehicle to finance this really critical mission has almost 100x our ability to do this from the perspective of like infinite.
Yeah.
And that's what's really just driving me now to get this message, this story in front of communities of change makers like you've built. So what
Yeah.
questions do you have so we can dig deeper for your
Well,
community?
number one is that, you know, the people listening, we did the whole thing on indifference the other day in the community, is we don't want to be indifferent. If it's $5 a month, I mean, look at tunnels to tower,
Of
right?
course.
They are revolutionizing what is happening to and serving veterans, right? All by $11 a month, right? And if they're $11 a month, people were stopped. They have some very wealthy people, no doubt. But if all the $11 a month would stop, they wouldn't be able to do what they do.
Yeah, of
So
course.
don't hopefully that you didn't get lost because you say, oh, there's all this money. This is important.
We have
Is
this group
yeah.
in Africa. I don't even know how they found out what we're doing. That I don't know how the group's relatively large. They each put in $5. Like
Oh
that's
man.
probably like you putting in 500,000 bucks. So
See,
like it's
ah,
remarkable. And here's what's really cool. So no matter what, we will have some really large anchored philanthropists, like really significant philanthropists, which is great from a infusion of capital perspective. But most likely that's the beginning and the end of their involvement is they make their donation. Whereas the beautiful everyday people that are putting in their $5, their $10, their $30, their $1,000, the $50 a month, whatever that number might be, my belief, and we'll see if this holds true, is those are going to be very active members of the donor network. So when we're listing companies in there that we've acquired and we're looking for affiliate partnerships or joint ventures or just wisdom, there's going to be thousands of people that didn't really put in that much economic money, but they're putting in so much value with regards to the insights they bring and the network they're able to introduce, et cetera. So everybody has a role here. And the key is that you don't judge your role against somebody else. You just commit to having a role. And maybe your role is $50 a month, which is
right,
remarkable. It'll make
right.
all the difference in the world. And
Yeah,
maybe your role is $15, but you're going to be an active member in the donor network. Or
yeah.
maybe your role is just one time $100 because you just love what we're talking about and you want to contribute. Everybody has a role. We just want to make sure that you play your role within it.
Yeah. Well, guys, follow Jared on social media. I mean it. What an incredible, energetic, as you could tell, yet energetic young man, entrepreneur, social entrepreneur. Which that's why I formed the 920 Society, man, is because of that's the only thing that's going to change the world of social entrepreneurs, and we all get one mindset because that's why I formed the society is to try to find those people who get one mindset of intention because intention changes everything, right? And so, as you said, it was a calling to you. You know, Frank McKinney. I think when you and I were
Mhm.
talking on the phone, I brought that up. You know, here he calls himself the modern day Robin Hood. You know, he built 43 homes in his 30-year
Amazing.
career, average sales price 15 million, $16 million, and he took all that money, went to Haiti, and started building villages. I mean, that's what that's what we're here for. That's what we're here for.
Yeah.
We came to bring heaven to earth.
And like, I think the greatest takeaway for all of you is that whether you participate by your dollars or cheering or whatever it might be in between, just listen to for your calling
That's
because
it.
every one of our life events, even if they make no sense in the moment, they make sense in the bigger picture and they prepare you for something bigger than you ever thought possible.
Yeah,
It just
yeah.
comes down to whether you're going to listen and then execute.
That's it.
And I'm just an example of someone that listened and executed. And this is not easy. I mean, this is a very challenging project. It's way easier just for me to send money to one of the existing causes in Israel. But what I'm doing is the thing that I know I'm uniquely qualified to do. And I don't believe anyone will do it if I don't do it, which means there's potentially hundreds to thousands of viable businesses that made it that just won't make it because not all 5,000 of these businesses would have made it regardless. So let's just say 20% of them had a fighting chance, and the other 80%, because startups are hard, they just wouldn't have made it regardless of war or no war. But that's potentially 1,000 viable opportunities. And let's say we save 250 of them. That's billions of dollars that we're sending back into Israel. I don't even know how many jobs it will create. It's almost impossible to measure the number of jobs it creates. It's 250 dreams that have been realized. It's 250 problems that now have a solution. And I was on a podcast a few weeks ago, and I think I shared this to you when we spoke as well. And the person that was hosting the podcast, they said to me, what's motivating you right now? Like, what's really the drive behind this? And I said, and the host wasn't Jewish. I said, I don't know if you know this, but Einstein was Jewish. And he's like, oh, I didn't actually know that. I'm like, well, you learn something new every day. Einstein was Jewish. But the reason I'm doing what I'm doing is I believe the next Einstein was working on an invention that was just going to change the world. And then October 7th happened. And the next Einstein was pulled out of his or her invention and pulled into combat. So that
Sure.
invention was just put on ice. And if we don't come in and find that invention, it's going to die, which means it's not going to change the world. So we're on a mission to find that invention, put that invention in a US-based C Corp so it's safe, and then commercialize it and scale it so that when this war ends and the next Einstein is relinquished from the responsibility of being in combat, he or she comes back now to a thriving invention and fulfills his or her life purpose. It might not work exactly like that, but that's my driving force, because
Yeah.
what we're seeing from an innovation perspective is meant to have a fighting chance. It's just not going to,
Yeah.
because you can't give it money. Like if there's someone listening right now and they're like, well, I just want to give that entrepreneur money. They're going to use the money for groceries. Like, they don't need money in their business. These companies are falling beneath the radar of capital. What they need is a team to come in and take over the operations.
Right.
And by doing that, it might actually enable them to stay involved, but they just can't be the sole provider for that business right now. Like, there's too many moving pieces in their life. So it's mission critical, it's time sensitive. I want to invite everyone to do something, whether it's pray and cheer or get involved in whatever economic capacity that you can. My ultimate goal is everyone does something, because then you're going to be inside of the donor network once we officially launch it. And that's where you really can get involved. And one of the things that's been interesting, Fred, which I just so stand for, is we're getting people that are giving gifts to the Innovation Bridge Foundation. They're making donations, and they're doing it because they want their kids to be inside the donor network. Because I believe that an unintended benefit from this is that the donor network becomes maybe the greatest entrepreneurial training in the world, because we're just going to show people what we're doing. Like, hey, we acquired this company and it didn't work, and here's what we've learned. What an incredible lesson for people. Hey, we acquired this company and it really worked, and this is exactly what we've done, so people can see it. So we're going to be radically transparent inside of our donor network, which is why I'm encouraging everybody to do something so they can get involved.
Yeah. Super, man. Super. Um, I always actually think of, because I do personal life coaching and that kind of thing, and usually I'll get entrepreneurs and their family, and especially where it's a husband, wife, and things happen in the family, and right away, not only does something happen, especially if it's health wise or something, then next thing you know, it's the health, and then it's the business right behind it. So I can't imagine someone out of the household that's running a business, husband and wife, um, in the same household. Not only do they lose their loved one to war, now the business is going right, and now here all of a sudden you step in. Now the mom is free to focus on the children. What a beautiful thing, man. What a beautiful
Yeah.
thing.
There's a ripple effect too. I was talking with a
Yeah.
probably close to
Yeah.
$1 trillion
Yeah. 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 Wow.
organization the other day. And they were saying that there's another impact that no one's realizing yet. Because if you think about the companies that we're focused on, this is kind of like the farm league of Major League Baseball, right? If all of a sudden the farm league was just cut, you wouldn't notice it initially, but in like 5 years, you would notice it because there was no talent, right? So it's like,
Right.
oh my goodness, where's all the talent? There's the greats are retiring, but there's no new talent coming in. So the whole league starts to suffer as a result. Well, that's what we're focused on. This is like the farm league of entrepreneurship. If all of the viable opportunities just disintegrate, there's no future in the tech ecosystem, which is going to be a setback that we'll actually realize in 5 to 7 years. But it's not just about those businesses. What about the asset management firms? Like, what are they doing now? Like, when there's a liquidity event in another business, like, there's going to be taxes that have to get paid. Well, one of the ways to not pay as much tax is to reinvest the money. What are they going to reinvest into if the farm league goes away? So there's an impact associated with what we're doing that won't even be felt or seen or even noticed for years, but it will be felt and noticed in years if something isn't done about it now. So this is like the key, is that you get to the source of the actual issue, because the source of the issue is we have to preserve the viable businesses. That's the source, whatever number that might be. Maybe it's a dozen, maybe it's hundreds, maybe it's 1,000. But we have to preserve those businesses so that those businesses can solve problems, create jobs, economic impact, and ultimately mature into the major leagues so that there is a major leagues in the tech environment, the tech ecosystem in Israel in 7, 8 years when these businesses would have matured and become very meaningful organizations in the country.
Yeah. Wow. Wow, man. That's fantastic stuff. Jared, thank you. I really appreciate you, and so glad that we got introduced and that you're part of the 920 Society, and social entrepreneurs changing the world. That's what it's all about, man. Thank you so
Awesome. I
much.
appreciate you, my friend. Be well.
Yeah,
Thank you, everybody.
yeah.